Hello, guys. Welcome to this podcast. Very impromptu setup, but the conversation is probably high quality. We hope so.
I hope so.
So, this is Manuel. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Manuel. I'm from Spain, and right now I'm responsible for marketing of the European region for Huawei, the Chinese company.
That's very cool. And
Thank you.
how did you end up at Hawaii?
Well, I studied international business, and then I lived in China for quite a while. I learned Chinese. I've worked in a couple of companies before, and it was kind of natural my way through the corporate world, following that Chinese thing, that let's say Chinese path, and yeah, that's how I got there.
Firstly, you said you studied international business. Have you ever started your own business, or did you prefer to just understand business from a macro perspective through a degree?
Well, before I entered Huawei, I tried a couple of businesses. One was I started an FBA Amazon
Yeah.
business with my little brother in Spain. We started selling in Europe, but Amazon was a business that was easy to scale, but let's say the profitability side was a very complex thing. In order to actually get the numbers. So for us was after a year and a half, it was like, okay, I think we can do better things with our money for better returns. So we stopped that, and we had a couple other side hustles that I guess had to stop at some point. But then we started a company in the middle of the NFT boom. So we were basically building NFT projects for brands, and the focus was on providing utility through those NFTs. The thing is, NFTs was a very strange market. At some point, there was a huge hype where companies and social media were pushing for NFTs. And then when Facebook decided to stop the NFT, let's say, push, we thought that we saw that the market was going nowhere. So then we decided to stop that business, and all of that happened while I was working. I worked for a little startup, worked in Amazon, and also worked in Huawei. Everything in
You
between.
were doing simultaneously?
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the three?
Everything was in between.
That's crazy. And you said NFTs. How did you get into it? Were you into tech, art, or just studying the market and
Right. So to me, it was very interesting the thing that through NFTs you could do art, and you could prove that art or that piece of content was original, and you could also prove the ownership, right? Who was the actual owner of the original piece. So that to me was super interested, and I, let's say, through self, study, I was going deeper and deeper into it, and nowadays that you can just learn anything in the internet. If you're curious about something, you will get the answers for sure. So that's how it started.
And then why do you think NFTs died out then? Because like you mentioned, they were very purposeful.
I think
The way you describe it.
right. I think personally, my perspective was that NFTs were relatively complex, but it was not necessarily NFTs. Like the crypto world, the cold wallets and all these processes were still too complex for the mainstream to kind of absorb it. So I think that combined with the fact that there were so many scams, basically, scared people away. So I really think that the technology is there, it's super useful, is amazing, but there are still too many barriers for people to start adopting it. So
When and do you think they will make a comeback?
I think perhaps if there is a comeback, it will come through solutions that would really, facilitate the interface, that would simplify processes, that would use a language that is much more easy to understand. And perhaps when at some point, if people go back to the ownership of digital stuff,
Yeah.
I think that would make a lot of sense. and especially for the for the traceability of goods and services, to make sure that things are actually original, and that they went through different processes, and to get those checks and verifications that those products went through certain processes. I think that has a lot of a lot of potential, but that doesn't directly involve, let's say, everybody to be using it. It's more like for B2B processes, I would say.
Okay, so more utility than like
Yeah,
the
basically.
club or
Yeah,
art.
I
What about
think so.
art?
For art, well, the thing is, for art, I've seen that people value much more the original, the
Pen
old
and
ways.
paper.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
actual physical things. Of course, physical things can also be linked to an NFT, to a digital stuff. So the digital work is the digital proof that something physical, it's there, and that you have it. But I personally don't think that digital art has been that much impactful. I mean, it was at some point, but nowadays, if you see the prices of NFTs, it's a
Yeah.
big crash. It's a big
Little
crash.
rug pull.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned a lot of different things. So let's like dive into first Chinese. What inspired you to learn such a difficult language? And
I have no idea.
really,
Honestly,
you just
I
kind of, you know,
I went with the flow. No, because what happened is that at university I had to pick one language. I studied international business, so I had to pick one language, and for some reason I thought, you know, if I naturally speak Spanish, I learned English, and I thought, what would be the most useful language that I could take, and then that moment was like, okay, Chinese, obviously. It could have been, Arabic, could have been Russian,
yeah.
but I think Chinese had some challenge to it. I mean, all the
Some?
other languages also
Some
are also very
challenge, yeah.
challenging, but I think Chinese got my eye, and at the beginning it was like for fun, but then when I saw the potential it had, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go all in.
Can
Yeah.
you tell us about some of the potential you saw in it?
Well, I mean, China has 1.4 billion people, and it's the second largest economy in the world. It was at the time, it was the economy that was growing the fastest. So to me, that was those three performance indicators were enough, like, for me to say, yeah, I have to do something here. Apart from the fact that, of course, international business was mostly related to international commerce, and I mean, China is the largest exporter of the world, so that to me was like,
Are you into economics? Do you?
very much.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Can
I
you tell
really-
us a little bit more about the Chinese economy then? Where you think it's headed?
Well, I think the Chinese, the focus for the Chinese people has been to grow their economy in the last 70 years. That have been their main focus, and there hasn't been any other country that has, taken so many people out of poverty in such a short time span. So that to me was like, okay, if they are focusing that much on money, or that much on economics, if my focus is to grow in that side, I have to be there, right? And as I mentioned, it's the country with the largest amount of export in the world, and being in Europe, that kind of matches it pretty well, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being there, have you learned anything? Like you mentioned, immersing yourself in the economy. Have you had any revelations that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise?
Oh wow, so many.
Yeah.
The Chinese people, they really have a different point of view of things. Here in the West, I think we think that things are in our way are that, how to put this thing, is like in the West we think that our way is the best way, And Chinese really think that their way is the best way, but there are so many differences in between. So when I got there and I saw that their way was working, at least in economical terms, way better than ours, that kind of opened my mind to say there are really things that as Westerners we don't know, and we are very arrogant about it.
To learn.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like we think that we know the answers, and yeah, I mean, the data speaks otherwise, I would say.
Yeah. What do you think the West is most ignorant about?
I think we overestimate the power of putting the collective above the individual. I think that's the main thing. That clearly Chinese people, they do put the collective above the individual, and perhaps in the West we are so focused on what is ours as individuals, our own realization as individuals, our own desires as individuals. And the Chinese people and the Chinese government, they have really understood that if you get to sacrifice the individual for the good of the collective through a long enough time span, you can get amazing results for everybody.
I don't know where there's like, what was the name of the thinker, but he had a philosophy that if everyone acts in their best self-interest, collective as a whole becomes better. And so I feel like that would be in line with the Western approach. Why do you think that that's not possible?
So yeah, that's a very good point. Politically speaking, if everybody in the society has a word to say about who's going to lead the country, and we can say that, let's take as an example, 40% of the population is not educated, you will naturally get terrible leaders, right? Or you will get the leader that is the most appealing instead of the most competent. China is very different in this aspect. China works as a technocracy where only the individuals that have the knowledge about a specific topic or area, they are the only ones that have a word to say about it. You know what I'm saying? Like if you enter the hospital and you're gonna have a surgery, you don't ask everybody in the hospital. You don't ask all the employees in the hospital what do they think is best for lung surgery. You would ask the surgeon, and then when you have to put the anesthesia, you would ask the specific exactly. You ask the specific person for it. But it's not like everybody has a word about it. So China is kind of like that. It's like we as economists, we decide what the economy is going to look like, and there's like an orchestration that work all together, so everybody's aligned with what let's say the top management decides that the country's moving forward.
The only problem that I can think of with that, and like of course my views are stereotyped by the Western media, I've never been there, but the idea that since the Chinese government has a lot of control over people, what they do with this study, even if someone wanted to become competent to be able to affect change, that they just would be unable to, because they'll never let them get to a level where they're an expert or knowledgeable enough to comment on like a topic. What do you say about that?
Yeah, well, I think that's arguably the case, because if you really look into the Chinese politics, you would always find an amazing, pretty astonishing record of that person in each position of power. You will never see, the head of economy as a guy that, I don't know, was working as a lawyer or something like that. You will see that the guy went to the best university in the country, which is Beijing University. He graduated, I don't know, he did a master's in Stanford, and the guy came back. So you will only find extremely prepared people in these positions. And then China also have like very specific systems to avoid corruption, where they are constantly rotating positions. So every time you rotate, the person that comes next is kind of like auditing what you did. So there
Damn.
is no way that, or it's not that there's no way. It's more complicated to get, corruption or systemic corruption in the whole thing.
I never heard of that. That's very
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
and smart.
They have to rotate. For some positions is 2 years. For some positions is 5 years. But it's always rotating.
Interesting. And like, as individuals, like normal people, is there anything they should know or like consider or look into to position themselves better prepared for what's to come economically speaking, also including China?
In China,
In China
or
more macro as well.
yeah, I think if there's something that I've learned from working at Huawei right now, is that macroeconomic trends, political trends, actually dictate quite a lot of the movement of the economy. So, as an example, right now in Europe signed 17 points where they want to transition to,
Sustainability.
yeah, sustainability, exactly, the 17,
Yeah.
right? So one of the points is clean energy. So Huawei saw that, and they were like, all right, so if all these countries are committing to clean energy, what is the best thing that we can do? Solar energy. Boom. Huawei was already a big player, a big brand. Pretty much, well, China, Huawei at the time was the largest private Chinese company.
Damn.
Yeah, so they were like, we have the reputation, we can build this. The countries are moving towards that direction, and they already set goals for 2030, 2015.
50.
Yeah, 2030
Wow.
and 2050. So if you already know that the countries are moving towards a direction, it's much better to position yourself in a place where you're gonna sooner or later get the market flow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that if you are actually paying attention to what what strategies and what objectives countries have, and you can position yourself in those, let's say, industries, or you can put your business in a way that sooner or later will catch that wave. I think that's how you can start making,
Big moves.
big moves.
Guys,
Yeah.
take notes. In order to start a billion-dollar business, you need to analyze political events
Yes.
and policies.
Yes.
So you studied business and like you tried Amazon FBA and it gives like an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
But now you're focusing full-time working on Hawaii marketing, correct?
Yes.
How do you feel about it? Do you enjoy it? How did the switch being an entrepreneur to corporate world come again? And do you plan to like switch back or like what's it?
Yeah. So it's a very good question, because when I accepted to work in Huawei, I thought, as a Chinese speaker, what would be one of the best, sort of social proofs that I could get that, one, I speak Chinese, let's say, two, that I'm competent, and three, that I've had some experience with the big players, let's say. And I thought, I think it's a good move for a Chinese speaker to, as I said, to work in the largest private company of the country. And I think I also wanted to experience what being in a corporate job would look like. I've always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't want to be an entrepreneur that would only complain about corporate without ever being there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so far so good, But I think I've been very lucky because I haven't had, too many hardships in my work, or very difficult bosses, or I've felt that I've been extremely lucky. So yeah, I mean, I really have no much to complain about. It's just the thing that probably you could do better things with your time.
And by working in corporate, what have you learned, if anything?
Wow, I've learned a lot about organization.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about, as I said, catching the waves of the market. I've learned a lot about team building. I've learned a lot about the power and let's say the voice that these huge companies have. That's something that you cannot get if you're working, from scratch, in a venture, let's say.
What's one learning from like this corporate experience that you think could have really transformed your entrepreneurial journey, or it's like you knew when you were doing your businesses before that it could have like really changed the way it worked out, if anything?
Honestly, I think the thing is, I believe that everything that happens, I really believe that everything that happens to me works in my favor.
Yeah.
So it's like every step I've taken, everything I've seen has made me who I am today. So but if I have to pick one thing, I think alignment in an organization is the most important thing for things to work efficiently. Alignment.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I think the job of a leader, the job of a CEO, the job of a director, the job of a manager is to be constantly reminding the whole team and the whole organization what the goals are and what the priorities are in the long and in the short term. I think it's crucial that people know exactly what they're doing. I think it's crucial that there are open conversations about whether we are walking in the right direction. I think it's crucial communication from the bottom to the top and from the top to the bottom.
That sounds very achievable when it's like a small company size, like a startup, like 15 to 20 people.
Yeah.
But when we reach like at a scale as Hawaii, do you think that's still achievable? And how?
I think it's very achievable. It's just a matter of prioritizing. If you're responsible for, let's say in my case, I have 11 countries, right, that I need to be checking. If I don't have time to dedicate 10 minutes to every country, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, to have alignment meetings, because, I think that I'm too busy, that I need to do that other things are more important than me letting the team know why we're doing things and reviewing whether things are actually walking in the right direction. I think there's nothing more important than that. If your job as a manager, your job as a director, your job as a CEO is to guide. It's really to guide the direction. The thing is, we are sometimes we forget what really matters, and we think that if we invest 1 hour of our time on a specific task, will be better than if we focus 1 hour of our time on letting everybody know what the tasks are.
Damn.
So I think that's the most important job. I like to think we're typically thinking about organizations like as a pyramid.
Yeah.
I like to think as an inverse pyramid, where the job of the CEO or the director is to kind of serve the managers, and the job of the managers is to serve the people, at the bottom of the organization, because in the end, those are the ones that are executing. And so I think of it in a completely different way. It's like, I'm not the boss of the people that I hire. I'm kind of like, I'm there to help them in the operational part. So yeah, I think it's a different perspective. But
what are some ways you grew as a leader? Because these perspectives are super interesting, and how is that journey like, and where do you think you are?
I think as a leader, your job is to lead, right?
Yeah.
So in order to lead,
what do you think it means to lead?
To lead needs to lead has to be, I know where we're going. or at least I'm pointing at the direction that we're going, and I'm providing with all the things to help my team walk towards that direction. And in order to do that, you need to have communicational skills, for sure. That's like a basic. You need to have time management, another basic. And you need to have like very, very, very high, like you need to be able to ask high quality questions. That is the way you uncover all the issues that you're having in the business, or the personal issues that people in your team is having, the business issues that people is having, the circumstances, the environment. It's all done through high quality questions, I believe.
Hey, super interesting. Next question.
Next question.
I think I want to dive more like deeper into like your journey, and like you said, like everything happened in your favor. How did you end up here? As in, like you said that you always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Since when did you know that, and why?
I think this is a rather interesting topic, because I always felt like I didn't want to have any boss.
Yeah.
I've always felt that I wanted to be the boss. And then I understood that through that mentality, I was having some sort of resistance to learning, because there had to be, like, if you really have an issue having a boss, it's kind of like you have issues with authority. The thing is, it really depends on how you frame the relationship. Because if you have a boss, and the boss, let's say, know things that you don't know, if the boss is able to teach you things that you don't know, you can have awesome relationships with people that are, let's say, in a higher competent structure or hierarchy. Instead of just seeing like, no, I want to be my own boss. I want to know what I want to do whatever I want to do. And it's like, okay, that's definitely a way. But if you get humble, and instead of that, you're open and willing to learn, things would transform. So I was like, I'm gonna be
my own
boss. And then I was like, okay, how about you chill? How about you shut your mouth and you learn and you listen and you get into, as I said, what the corporate world is like. And yeah, that's how I kind of accepted that this was going to be part of my journey. And I know that sooner or later, life will demand that I create something on my own. And so it will be, and I'll have all the learnings that I've gathered through these years.
That's amazing. Almost like all entrepreneurs, at least in the online space, they all seem to have this like problem with authority, and like really hating it. Where do you think that comes from? Why is it like so common? Is there anything you've realized about yourself from like where this kind of like mindset comes from?
I don't know. It could be from so many places, but the thing is, ultimately, I don't know if this is true, but I think some people is I don't know. Some people is born with a different
DNA.
Yeah. I really think that some people is just made for different stuff, and I really think that's a good thing. Everybody. This is such a big one. Everybody thinks that because they are having high positions of power, that they are better than other people, or they feel like if they have, more money or a higher rank, they will be better, and they are forgetting to notice that as competence increase, responsibility also increases. Perhaps the free time that you have also increases. The busy time also increases.
Less free time.
Yeah, and this is weight on your shoulders somehow. Some people that don't have that responsibility, they might be, lightly walking on the streets, relaxed and this and that. And you're, in the grind. So everybody is ultimately paying a price. Everybody, from the top to the bottom. If you're in the bottom, you're paying the price that perhaps you don't have as much money or perhaps you don't have as much responsibility. But, you know,
You
you
just
can,
do what you're
you
told.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Less
You don't
think
have to
hard.
think. You
Yeah.
don't have to. All right, that's fine. I mean, he's paying a price, and
Yeah.
the boss, the super boss, is also paying a price. He's paying a price of the stress. He's paying a price of the responsibility. Of course, he's being rewarded for it. But that's the beauty of it. That as a society, we need everybody. Everybody belongs. Everybody has a role, and everybody's necessary.
Yeah.
That's my
the
belief, at least.
the only problem that I see with this whole like online space and like be your own boss and like I don't like authority is like so many kids that are consuming this content and like they're taught to hate this kind of like authority, like how you're such a loser if you want to work for someone else, like what
Yeah.
are you doing,
Yeah.
which I get and which is like valid as well, but like these kids then grow up with ignorance like you mentioned, like
Yeah.
yeah, why would I want someone to be my boss? But with higher levels of authority comes high responsibility, which you have to be capable of handling. You can't just be like, I'm just gonna go out there and I mean maybe you can execute it, but then again, you always be at a much lower scale, not like in the billions. So the humility is really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, and you can really see this integrated to some people. I've hired people that they're very senior and they don't want to move forward. They like their job, they like what they do, they don't want more responsibility. They
Yeah.
are just they are fine. Whatever they are there and they are okay. And I'm like, awesome. Okay, I know that you are for this position. And then some other people in the same role, they just want to keep growing. And then as a manager, you need to be able to observe these traits so you can position people in the right place. But it's not that one of these has more worth than the other, because
Yeah.
perhaps the one that wants to continue to escalate, sooner or later is going to leave that position open, right? Because he wants to escalate.
Yeah.
So you really need to understand that, as I said, everybody belongs and everybody has let's say a target and a purpose and a position, and everybody's different, I guess. So
People need to work in the superiority complex a little bit,
very true. Yeah.
I think this approach kind of comes from insecurity to a certain extent.
I think so. Yeah. Sometimes with many other stuff on top, but yeah, I mean, for sure, feeling of could be yeah, whatever, could be too many things.
Too many
Yeah.
things. Amazing.
How about something more, I don't know, personal?
Yeah. Did you have a happy childhood? What'd you say?
I feel like I had an amazing childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I could, at some other point of my life, I could have said the exact opposite.
Why would that be?
Because it really depends on the angle that you take. As I was saying, if it's deeply in my core, the belief that everything that happens to me is in my favor, if I had like a difficult experience at some point, if I'm able to extract from there, like, the lesson, the gem that is hidden there, then you don't really, or at least I don't really feel like, okay, I had a difficult childhood. So I could say, I had a difficult upbringing because my family was highly dysfunctional. But then I could say, like, in my childhood, I learned a lot about how to have a family that would, work lovingly and
Yeah.
it's kind of like the exact same thing. It's just that the way you're taking it is totally different. So right now, I would say that, I mean, for some people, I would have had a very difficult upbringing. For some of the people, that would have been, a roller coaster. A roller coaster. It was a lot of fun.
Damn.
Yeah, I think it's really about how you take it. Really.
Was there like a lowest point in your life, or like an inflection point, which caused this like change in perspective? Because this is a very mature take, right? Like I don't think that when you're going through some tough times that you can automatically just have this kind of really optimistic perspective. Is there like a
Yeah.
book you read, a person you met, anything?
I think I've read a lot of stuff and I've met a lot of people, but there's a saying that says, until you have suffered enough, you're not going to realize that suffering is unnecessary. It's kind of like if you have really touched the bottom for yourself, there's a moment of realization where you say like, okay, it's enough. And then when you say it's enough, then you start finding the ways to, you know, get some deeper understanding or some deeper wisdom that would sustain you. And
What was that point for you?
that point for me was through a relationship I had. We were 3 years together, and it was one of those very intense relationships, like, fire everywhere
Wow.
and in all senses. And when things turn sideways, it was a very, very difficult thing to deal with. So I really touched some sort of bottom, of let's say my mindset, of my ego, of the way I wanted things to be instead of how they were. And at that point, I had some like a moment of awakening, I would call.
Really?
Yeah, immediately after the dip, let's say, after having end of the relationship and going through the grieving process and all the painful year after that.
A year.
I think it was long. Yeah, it was pretty long. Yeah.
Why do you think things went sideways in like a relationship in terms of like, a macro perspective, like learnings that people can take for their relationships as well?
Well, there's so many things there to say. I think, look, I think everybody builds this personality, this identity of ourselves, of how we think we should be. And when reality hits and we find out that we are not who we think we are, sometimes we will clinch against that and we'll say, no, I'm not this. When you know that this is what is happening, I mean, it's self-evident. That kind of like delusional process of this is not what is happening made me realize that there was a part of me that was kind of resisting reality, resisting what it is, resisting what it was.
Yeah.
So dissolving that ego was the most difficult thing for me, accepting that I was not who I thought I was. And kind of like the humility that came after that.
But what do you say then to like this whole approach of like manifestation? You should act like who you are, and then you become that person. Like in a way, I'm assuming that the person that, let's say, you were denying who you were, like, but reality showed you otherwise. But then that's contradictory to the point that if you imagine yourself and act like it, you become it.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between how we want to be in the future versus what we are right now. So for me, I was against not the future, but I was against the past and the present. I was like, what happened is not what I thought it happened. And then in the present, what is happening is not what is happening. Deep down, I knew it was what is happening. But I think from the manifestation point of view, it's not that you act like it so you can get it. It's kind of like you act like if you already have it. So when you act like if you already have it, then some stuff change. But
Yeah.
it's it's a tricky thing. It's easy to confuse. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of long-term relationships now, how would you say you'd approach them differently? What's important?
Very good one. I think for long-term relationships, you need to become the person that would be, let's say, that would be able to handle the kind of person you want to be with. And that is something I failed to recognize before. I will give you an example. Let's say, yeah, of course, every guy wants a model. Yeah, okay, we could say it like that. Yeah. So if you want a model, you need to be mentally and emotionally ready for her, to do her job, to to be in the environment that she has to be in. And as I was saying, many people think that, okay, yeah, this is going to be she's so beautiful, so that's okay. I mean, I love it. But, maybe you're not ready to see her, I don't know, like the fear of her leaving when she's interacting with other people of her circle and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's something that people forget a lot about. It's like, yeah, I want this. It's like, okay, are you willing to pay the price for it?
Yeah.
And the same for girls. I mean, yeah, you want the best guy, the richest guy, the most handsome guy, and then as soon as you see the guy, with another girl that you would say, okay, wow, this girl is amazing. Then I mean, jealousy and this stuff starts hitting. It's like, okay, but you wanted this guy, so what do you think was going to happen?
No, but that's arguable in the sense, like, is the guy just like interacting with this girl in like a normal setting, or if it's like he's also like flirting back,
Yeah, no, of course. I say it more from a perspective of,
if he gets attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he will, right? The same for both sides.
Yeah.
They will, and unless you're emotionally prepared for that, it's gonna be rough, right? So that's why I answered the question by, you gotta be the person that you want that can handle.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Is there anything else?
No, for now.
Damn,
I mean,
that was your biggest problem. Like you.
Oh no, about learning about long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Never, ever leave open a long-distance relationship without a target to get together at some point. With a specific date, with a specific...
A date as well?
Never leave it open.
You need a date as well? It can't just
you need to know when you guys are going to see each other, and you need to know what's the plan for you to get together. I learned this the hard way. I learned this in the hard way. Yeah.
And in terms of that, do you think that you date with the intention of marriage, or do you just date to see where it goes?
I think right now I'm dating without intention, because I'm pretty comfortable. I'm very happy to say that I'm pretty comfortable for being alone right now. And, I think that we have this idea, right, that if we meet the next person, we want them to be with us for the rest of our lives. And, statistics show pretty much, are the opposite, right? It's kind of easier to get divorced, or it's kind of like, I'll put it in this way. You need to be open to the possibility that you're not going to meet the love of your life.
Ever? Really?
Really.
It's really sad.
Respect. Yeah, it could sound sad, but the thing is, when you don't when you don't attach the expectation to someone else that they need to be with you for the rest of your life, you kind of create a space where you have more air to let the other person be who they are. So they don't need to have this tension of, okay, if I'm myself, then they might leave. And it's the exact same thing for you. If you're open to simply be yourself and pay the price, whatever it takes, to just be yourself, I think you might be able to create deeper relationships that, maybe it's not the love of your life, maybe it will be the love of your life, but at least it was real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you, but I also slightly differ in the sense that when you say like you're not dating with like intention, I would not want to spend any time or emotional energy or like investment because I'm okay with being alone as well into someone that I don't potentially see like a future with. Like they don't have to be my husband, but like if I can't even imagine it, then I don't want to spend like another minute or like energy, and in that sense then it becomes like dating with intention. And to your point, actually, I agree with you that it creates more pressure. And sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I'm so young. I should like calm down, like chill. Like there's just like, it's very hard to find a person who kind of like, like when it's your lifetime partner, you have expectations, you have like different things. And maybe if I didn't have that in mind, I would really enjoy like a person. But because of this, I can't. But then it also brings me to the question, like, do I want to enjoy with someone who doesn't have these qualities, like, doesn't matter? Then, like, I should just let them go. I'm just, like, trying to not be alone.
Yeah.
If that's my approach.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I would say that when I said that I don't date with expectations, I'm talking about the first date. I'm talking about the first couple, 3 dates, right? Okay. It's kind of like...
That's fair.
I don't really think that we pick people. I really think that there's something in us that tells us this is the way to go. And then you're like, okay. But do you decide who you like or it's kind of like something that happens to us, and then we are like we bow and say yes, or we're like no, not here. But we don't decide who we like. Right? It's kind of like, what do you think about that? It's kind of, to me, something that happens.
Okay, yeah.
Because I've dated people that I'm like, oh wow, super cool, everything nice, all the good qualities checked, and for some reason there was not attraction at all. And then I'll be like, it's not here. I mean, there's no attraction at all, right? And sometimes it's the other way around. You're like, okay, this is as bad as it
big
gets.
Big red flag.
Yeah, big red flags everywhere. So you gotta be able to feel, and then decide whether you want to move on or not. But yeah, my point was that I don't date with the expectation that I want this to be like this. It's kind of like, I will know when the time comes, and if it doesn't come, it didn't come.
Additionally, because like I got like my mom's like kind of advice, like don't look for the man who wants a wife, but look for the man who wants to be a husband. Have you ever, while dating,
that's a very good point.
While dating, thought, how can you be a good husband, or you're still at the point of like, I'm looking for a wife?
I think this is very aligned with what I said before about I'd rather become the man that would attract the woman than I want to get the woman.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think that's my perspective too. So I would agree with you, Mom, 100%.
That's amazing.
It's a good point.
You're on a good path. When's the wedding? Do I get an invite?
You'll probably get, yeah.
Amazing.
Adam's in too.
Amazing. Okay.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
So I think we have
covered a lot of different topics at 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah. That sounds like a good interview, yeah.
We could go into depth into way many topics, but I think like food's calling.
Yeah, no, it's good.
The steak.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving us your time. See you guys in the next. No, I gotta Outro. Well, okay.
You can call that part.
See you guys in the next. No,
Mike.
I forgot. Thank you for tuning in with our very special guest Manuel. Maybe there'll be a part 2 sometime if you like, follow, share, subscribe, everything. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Manuel.